Hello and welcome to the I Can Do podcast with Benjamin Lee. We're here to talk about tips and strategies to have an I Can Do mindset. Life is what you put into it. Get the most you can. Here's your host, Benjamin Lee.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of I Can Do. I am Benjamin Lee, so thankful to be able to talk to you today. I lost my voice for the most part the last week and a half, almost 2 weeks. So I was really thankful yesterday, Sunday, that I had the opportunity to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, to teach my Bible class. We're currently going through 1 Corinthians. And today has been a great day because today I've not really coughed that much. I still have a little bit of a cough, and I'm going to go see my internal med physician here later on just to make sure everything is okay, but really happy about that. So thank you for tuning in. I know that there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts that are out there, and I hope this podcast will continue to encourage you along the way. I do want to give you a quick update. I had started another podcast last year, which was called the Today and Tomorrow podcast, which really focused on faith. And over the last 4 years now, I have had the opportunity to write a number of Bible bulletins for the congregation where I preach. So that podcast, the Today and Tomorrow podcast, was really me turning those bulletins into a short podcast episode. Well, I took some time off from doing that, but I'm back now doing that. And I have changed the name of that podcast. And now it is called The Bible with Benjamin Lee. So you can find that on Apple and Spotify, The Bible with Benjamin Lee. Those podcasts are shorter. I will be sharing more sermons on that podcast as well. And that podcast is really just dealing everything with respect to faith and the Word of God. As you know, the I Can Do podcast, I have a number of guests that we have on this show. Getting prepped. I already have a couple of more confirmations of people who are going to be on the show within the next month. So really excited about that. And this podcast is all about not just with spiritual development, that's a big part of it, but also physical health and personal development as well. So the Bible with Benjamin Lee, that podcast will be only for episodes and discussions regarding the Word of God. And this podcast will continue, hopefully to motivate you and to encourage you in every aspect of your life. So many of you who know me know that I love books, and I have a book in my hand here. It is called Success is Simple, a concise step-by-step guide to successful living by D. Paul Reilly. Now, this book was left behind for me by another preacher, and he left me a number of books, and I really appreciate that. And it's a really short book to read. Each chapter is only a few pages, and he talks about a variety of things. There's only about 96 pages in the book where he talks about success, self-concept, desire, goals, attitude, planning, communication, persistency, problems, the brain, law, knowledge, finance, security, truth, health, self-discipline, leadership, and action. There are, 19 episodes right there for a podcast. I want to focus on one in particular today. This episode is really all about focusing on how do we handle problems? How do we handle problems? I really like this chapter. Now, there's nothing per se earth-shattering, but sometimes when you read something from someone else, it can stick with you. It can come across a little bit different that I think will always be valuable. So I think this will help you. I know this will help you with the problems or challenges that you may have in your life at this time. Now, as a Christian and with my Christianity and my understanding of the truth of God, I believe we should always go to God in prayer when problems arise. I think about Nehemiah in Nehemiah chapter, and the entire book of Nehemiah rather, but Nehemiah went to God in prayer when problems arose, when he found out about challenges and difficulties. Now, the author doesn't talk about prayer. I believe that that's something we should always do. That should always be the number one thing that we do to have God with us and to figure out how we're going to handle this in the right way. Now, with respect to the book, there are a couple of things that I do want to share with you with how he talks about handling problems so that we can be successful. All right. Number one, what he talked about was, well, first you have to recognize and define the problem. Well, that doesn't seem like a big deal. Recognize the problem. Everybody knows when they have a problem, right? I think so, yes. However, sometimes we can ignore the problem. Sometimes we may actually have a hard time admitting that there actually is a problem. I'm not talking about something that is even sinful in nature, but some kind of problem. Maybe it's with your business. Maybe it's with your weight loss journey. Maybe it's with a book you're trying to write. Whatever that issue is, sometimes we can see or understand or feel like there is some kind of problem, but we don't always recognize it for what it is. And so we need to recognize and define the problem. Once we stop pretending, as he talked about in the book, then we will be able to make a lot of progression with overcoming that problem. Number two, I really like this point here. Know that your problem is waiting to be solved. That I really liked. Know that your problem is waiting to be solved. What he means by that is that when you start thinking about this problem, then that gets the mind and opportunities to address the problem. When we start thinking about the problem and looking at the problem and not worrying about the problem, but being concerned about it, then things will begin to change. So know that your problem is waiting to be solved. If you go into that problem or look at that problem and recognize, I think I can solve this, then that will help you to be successful as well. Number three, learn to react when there is no problem. I really like that. Where this idea is you prepare, even though there's nothing bad happening at this time. So you think about a fireman or policeman, they have different things that they practice, even though there's no emergency at that time. Why do they do that? So when that moment does come, when the fire is hot, obviously, when the pressure is on, that's not the first time that they have experienced that. So learn to react when there is no problem. Really ask yourself, okay, if this was to happen, how might I respond? That will help you go a long way as well. Number four, when you have a problem, go after it aggressively. What he means by that is don't just sit there and do nothing. When the problem is still small, attack it. Be aggressive with the problem. Again, that's hard because that forces us to recognize that there is a problem. That forces us to understand, okay, what am I going to do about this problem? So go after it aggressively. And then he said in number 5, look at the problem realistically. One of the things that he said to say out loud is, what's the worst that can happen? Now, depending on what the problem is, you may be saying, well, what if the worst has happened? I can remember when I got a stick shift truck back in 2016, all these fears that I had of, stalling at a hill or at a light or whatever the case may be. Almost every fear that I had came true. Okay. So sometimes the worst that can happen, maybe it does happen, but more often or not, the things that we worry about the most never happen. And so what he recommends is that you look at your problems realistically, say them out loud, examine them, get curious about it, and then attack them, be aggressive. So I thought this was really good when you think about success, whatever endeavor you're looking for or doing in your life or going after at this moment, consider these steps. of how to handle problems. Number one, you go to God in prayer and ask for wisdom. And then from the book standpoint, you recognize the problem and you define it. You know that your problem is waiting to be solved. You learn to react when there is no problem. You go after the problem aggressively, and you look at the problem realistically, all right? Hope this helps. What problems are you facing? Well, know that many problems can be overcome. If we're just persistent, if we're wise, if we take a step back, if we slow down to speed up, you might be surprised at how those problems eventually just melt away. Stay strong. I can do. So can you. Take care. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. If you are in the need or looking for more motivation in your life, feel free to check out my website, benjaminlee.blog, where you can find hundreds of encouraging, motivational blog posts on a variety of subjects. You can find all of my books, which can also be found on Amazon.com, and other podcast interviews with a variety of people. I hope this helps. Please leave me a rating and a review. I can do, and so can you. Take care, and God bless.